we need to take a deep breath. Look, I believe in traditional marriage, but the Supreme Court has ruled, and it's the law of the land, and we'll abide by it. And I think everybody needs to take a deep breath to see how this evolves. But I know this, I mean, religious institutions, religious entities, you know, like the Catholic Church, you know, they need to be honored as well. And I think there's an ability to strike a balance.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hour 2 of the Steve Malzberg Show. Joining us in a second is Tim Huelskamp, Congressman from the great state of Kansas, member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and chairman of the House Tea Party Caucus. But I also want to let everybody know that we have a lot to discuss, including what Donald Trump, you know, in NBC Universal today said they kicked him off, NBC Universal, because of the comments he made about Mexicans and immigration. Yet in his interview with J.D. Hayworth here last week, he said that he turned down the apprentice renewal, which is what he said today. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? It looks like Donald Trump is certainly telling the truth when he said he turned NBC down because he's running for president and he can't be on the apprentice. All right, Congressman Huelskamp is with us. And Congressman, welcome, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good to talk to you. Okay, what do you make of John Kasich? You know, and I don't know how many other Republicans he represents running for president, but I don't think it's many, saying it's the court decided, take a deep breath, we got to live with it. I mean, by that logic, let's live with Roe v. Wade. Let's live with Obamacare. I mean, I don't get that.
Well, I think we do, Steve. It's the same old compromise with the left. They're not about compromise. They're about winning, imposing their will. That's why they go to the courts every time they can, because they know they can win that there and nowhere else. And we've got to stand up for marriage. We've got to stand up for the First Amendment rights of those who disagree. There is no doubt. We're already seeing it come out. They want to go after churches and educational institutions, nonprofits. Anybody that doesn't agree will be made to care. And not only accepting same-sex unions, but now we're talking plural unions. John Roberts mentioned that. We're talking about polygamy. He mentioned that as well. Those kind of things that were unthought of just a few years ago is now ordinary. You must accept that from Washington, D.C. And backing down, like Kasich is suggesting, is exactly how the left wins battle after battle.
Okay. Do you agree, as I think Rand Paul has been out there saying, and maybe some others, that the government should get out of the marriage business? Now, I don't know if I have this completely right, but if the states, for instance, say, we're out of it, you got to go to your church, you got to go to your synagogue, you got to go to your mosque to get a marriage license to get married, and then they could refuse, based on religious objection, to marry a gay couple, then that will kind of thwart and be an end around this Supreme Court decision.
Well, that would be interesting, but at the end of the day, I think marriage is too important to eliminate it from the public square. There's one thing that wasn't discussed in the decision. If you look at the cases the court pointed out and the tearjerkers, the majority opinion of a slim majority of 5 looked at, had nothing to do with the next generation. And in most of those cases, we haven't talked about the children. The impact of destroying marriage is going to be a long-term felt. Society after society, government after government has decided marriage between a man and a woman and the family is too important to not consider that role in society. So no, the left is not going to let us go that way anyway. These are folks that generally don't want to stand up for marriage and haven't stood up yet. I mean, I have a constitutional amendment on marriage. We had, back before I came to Congress, you had John Boehner and about 200 other people sign on to it 10 years ago today, where I think we're sitting at 50 co-sponsors. I mean, that's what you see out of Republicans in Washington. They're backing down. They tend to back down on life issues and marriage issues. They tend to back down on exactly the issues that make us different from the Democrats when we're looking at getting minority votes. The minorities votes, really, they're looking for social conservative values. That's why the Republican Party needs to speak up now rather than back down, as so many of these Washington, D.C. politicians are suggesting we do.
And minorities, you believe? I mean, look, you know, in Prop 8 in California, at a higher percentage than any other ethnic group, blacks came out and voted against gay marriage. You believe that Republicans, as you alluded to here, are missing the boat on this when it comes to the minority community?
They certainly are. I spoke at a marriage rally in Washington, D.C. Last June, and a little over a year ago, and it was primarily minorities. I come from a family. I have 4 adopted children of various racial and ethnic backgrounds, and so we fit in very well there. But Republicans got to be willing to stand up for those issues that are at the heart of our platform, our principles, they also have the political advantage of being, I think, the issues by which we can introduce ourselves to folks that generally don't typically vote Republican. Say, hey, we care about fundamental values, and if you're going to give up on marriage and give up on life, and then for some reason you see us giving up on spending too, at the end of the day, people are wondering, well, what do Republicans stand for other than a slower cultural and fiscal decline here in this country, and that's not good enough if you want to win elections in 2016 and beyond.
Let me go to the day before this decision, when the health care decision came down, and Obama went out there and talked about how the law's here to stay, and all the naysayers and doomsdayers, it never happened and it's working and blah blah blah. And Boehner went out and made some kind of announcement, we're going to continue the fight. You know, Congressman. First of all, why didn't Boehner bring with him a person who lost their oncologist, a person who lost their hospital, a child who lost their pediatrician or their specialist because of Obamacare? Why don't we fight, or you fight, or Republicans fight the way Democrats fight? Why this laissez-faire attitude and a lack of communication to the American public? And you know, only Trump has said this, Congressman. It's not till after the 2016 elections, that we're going to actually feel Obamacare. 80 some odd million people are then going to be affected because Obama pushed the employer mandates down the road. Why does nobody say this?
I mean, it's shocking. One could chalk it up to stupidity, and that might be a real reason why folks in Washington are not doing the right thing. But if you you try the same thing again and again, you get different results. There's another name for that. But yeah, we've got to understand, and that's the problem with Republicans in general in Washington, and maybe not outside of Washington. We can see it elsewhere where they're doing the right thing. We got to be able to talk and understand how it impacts people. I think part of the problem, I tell my wife this again and again, I think we got a lot of Republicans in Washington, frankly, don't know what an average ordinary family or man or woman cares about, because they're not average and ordinary. They live in Washington, they work in Washington, they read the Washington Post, and then when they get time, they'll read the Wall Street Journal. Meanwhile, the average American is trying to get by and wonder, well, why don't you like the minimum wage when we can't even explain what it means?
I'll tell you, though, so do with all due respect, so do the Democrats, and they get the message out, and they send Debbie Wasserman Schultz out there to cry and moan and, in my view, lie. And you know what? I think I'll chalk it up to the stupidity. Maybe you had it right there in the beginning. But let me ask you this. I'm particularly bothered by, and this isn't brand new, but it seems like it's stronger than ever, the retaliation by Boehner punishing those like you who don't go along with the leadership. What's going on?
Well, we're still on the receiving end. If you vote conservative in the Republican Party in the House, you will be punished. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But we saw good news last week. They went after my colleague Mark Meadows. And I guess they picked the wrong one and picked one too recent, because within a few days we were able to get him back into his committee slot that he belonged in. But at the end of the day, you'll read about 12 that are punished. My guess is it's 2 or 3 or 4 dozen of folks that understand issues, that are fighting for conservative principles, actually keep their word, and when they go to Washington get punished. Because there is a scorecard. Every time they decide committee appointments, they walk in with a scorecard, Steve. And if you don't vote the right way, and that's not the conservative way, if you don't vote the way the leadership tells you to vote, you get a red mark. And so my friend Justin Amash can be told that you voted wrong every single time. I think I got it right 2 times. Well, wait a minute. We've got strong conservative records by independent conservative organizations, so that tells you, of course, they won't share the voting card with us. That tells you there's a Washington way and there's the rest of America. And that's how Republicans talk the right talk at home and then lose in Washington, lose big elections, because people don't trust us, because we say one thing and do another as a party. And we see that when you punish conservatives.
It is really disheartening, Congressman, and I know that the base feels the same way. And I'm certainly not speaking on anybody's behalf but my own here, but it's disgusting. And I'm fed up with Boehner. I'm certainly fed up with McConnell, who ran on, oh, we're going to send a bill to the president every week and let him veto it. They've sent nothing. All he had was Keystone. What else have you guys sent to him? Nothing. I mean, it's really quite sickening, and I know it's not your fault, and people like-minded such as yourself. And keep up the good work is all I could say.
Well, that's why we keep fighting, and I'm out doing 5 town halls as we speak, and,
wow.
And folks are upset.
I know.
I tell you.
Congressman, I'm dead out of time, but thank you so much for joining us. Congressman
Tim
Huelskamp, ladies and gentlemen. Hank Scheinkampf's next.